Right now, almost everything you've been taught about manifesting your life is backwards. And that's exactly why you feel stuck even after trying so many methods, repeating affirmations, setting goals, and pushing yourself to stay focused on one thing at a time. Because the popular advice sounds logical but quietly limits how your mind actually works. You were told to narrow your focus, to pick one desire, to go step by step. But what if that slow, linear way is the real reason nothing fully clicks? What if trying to control each goal separately is keeping you scattered instead of aligned? Because the truth is not that you are doing too much. The truth is that you are trying to manifest in pieces, while your mind operates as a whole system. And once you understand this shift, everything starts to connect in a way that feels almost unfair to people who are still stuck in the old approach. Because you can manifest everything you want at once, not by chasing more, not by forcing more effort, but by changing something deeper that most people completely overlook. And the surprising part is this is not a new secret. It's just a misunderstood one, something that has been simplified too much online until it lost its real power. And almost everyone ends up repeating the same cycle. They pick a goal, they focus hard, they get tired, they lose motivation. And then they blame themselves when in reality the system they are following was never designed to create full life transformation in the first place. Because your mind doesn't separate your life into categories the way goal lists do. It doesn't treat money, health, confidence, and relationships as different boxes. It responds to a single internal state, and that state quietly controls everything you experience on the outside. Which means if you try to change outcomes without shifting that state, you are always going to feel like you are chasing results that never fully stay. And this is where things start to get interesting. Because once you stop trying to manifest things one by one, and instead understand how identity and internal alignment work together, you unlock a completely different process. One that doesn't require constant effort or pressure. One that actually feels natural. And in this video you are going to learn exactly how that works in a simple, clear way. You will understand why focusing on one goal can actually slow you down, how your brain filters reality based on who you believe you are, and how to collapse multiple desires into a single powerful direction so that everything starts moving together instead of separately. You will also learn the hidden mistake that keeps people repeating the same patterns for years without realizing it, and why trying harder is not the answer even though it feels like it should be. And by the end of this video, the way you look at manifestation will shift completely. Because instead of thinking about what you need to get, you will start to see who you need to become, and that one change affects every area of your life at the same time, which is why it is so powerful and also why it is rarely explained properly. So if you stay till the end, you are not just going to hear ideas. You are going to understand a system that you can actually apply immediately without overcomplicating it. And once it clicks, you will start noticing patterns you never saw before, decisions becoming easier, and a sense of clarity that replaces the constant overthinking. Because things begin to align instead of compete for your attention. And that is the real goal. Not more effort, but better direction. Not more goals, but a stronger internal position. So if you are ready to stop doing things the hard way and finally understand how to move everything forward together instead of one piece at a time, then stay with me, because what you are about to learn might be the missing link that changes how you approach your entire life from this point on. And if you are new here, welcome to the channel. This is where we break down powerful ideas into simple truths that actually work in real life. So make sure you subscribe and stay connected for more clarity like this, because sometimes one shift is all it takes to change everything. Your mind is not calm because your desires are not simple. They are layered and constantly moving. One moment you want more money, then you think about your body. Then your focus shifts to peace, then to relationships, then to a better lifestyle. And all of this happens within minutes, without you even noticing how fast your attention changes. And every time it happens, you try to pull yourself back. You try to force clarity. You try to lock in on one goal, because that is what you were told works best. But the more you try to narrow things down, the more resistance you feel inside, like something is not fitting properly. And that creates a quiet frustration that keeps building over time, because no matter how hard you try to stay focused, your mind keeps jumping from one desire to another. And instead of understanding why that is happening, you start assuming that something is wrong with you. You label yourself as distracted, inconsistent, unfocused, and slowly that belief starts shaping how you see your own potential. You begin to think that maybe you just don't have the discipline, maybe you lack clarity, maybe you are the problem. And that thought becomes heavier than the goals themselves, because now it is not not just about achieving something, it is about fixing yourself first. And that creates even more pressure, because you are trying to control both your mind and your results at the same time. And the harder you push, the more scattered everything feels, because the real issue was never your desires in the first place. It was never about wanting too many things. It was never about being distracted. It was about the way you were trying to control those desires, trying to organize them in a way that does not match how your mind naturally operates, because your mind does not work in isolated parts. It does not separate money from confidence or health from peace. It processes everything together as one connected experience. And when you try to break that into pieces, you create internal conflict without realizing it. Because one part of you is trying to focus while another part keeps expanding. And that tension makes it feel like you are constantly falling behind, even when you are putting in effort. And this is where the shift begins to change everything. Because manifestation does not work one by one the way most people think. It does not respond to a checklist of goals that you complete step by step. It works from identity, from a deeper level that defines how you think, how you react, how you make decisions, and how you see the world around you. And this is the part that most people skip because it is less visible. But it is also the part that controls everything else, because you do not actually attract goals in the way you have been told. You do not pull results into your life just by wanting them hard enough or focusing on them long enough. You attract from the version of yourself that already matches those results. And that version is not divided. It is not focused on one area while ignoring the rest. It exists in a complete state where everything is already aligned together. And that is why it feels natural instead of forced, because there is no internal conflict in that state. There is no need to constantly redirect your attention. Everything flows from the same place. And when you start to understand this, the pressure to control every single desire begins to fade, because you realize that you were never meant to chase each goal separately. You were meant to step into a version of yourself that already holds all of them together. And that changes how you approach everything, because now instead of asking how to get more, you start asking who you need to become. And that question leads you in a completely different direction, one that feels more stable and more clear, because it is not based on temporary motivation. It is based on identity. And identity is what your mind follows naturally without resistance. And this is why you can manifest everything at once, not because you are forcing multiple outcomes, but because you are aligning with a single state that includes all of them. And your mind is designed to match that state, not individual desires. It is always scanning for consistency between who you believe you are and what you experience. And once those two start to match, things begin to shift in ways that feel almost automatic. Because you are no longer fighting yourself. You are moving in one direction internally and externally at the same time. And this is where the analogy becomes clear, because it works like tuning a radio. You do not select one song manually. You tune into a frequency, and everything that belongs to that frequency becomes available to you. And in the same way, you do not manifest one result at a time. You tune into a state, and everything connected to that state begins to appear in your life, not all at once in a dramatic way, but in a natural sequence that feels aligned. And this is why trying to focus on one goal can sometimes slow you down, because it keeps you operating from a limited version of yourself that does not fully match what you want, and that creates delays and inconsistencies that feel confusing. But once you shift your state, once you align your identity with the version of you that already has what you want, multiple areas of your life begin to move together, because they are no longer being treated as separate challenges. They are being influenced by the same internal change, and that is where real momentum starts to build, because now every decision you make, every thought you repeat, every action you take is coming from a place that supports all your goals at once, instead of pulling you in different directions. And that creates a sense of stability that most people never experience, because they are always switching between different mindsets, depending on what they are trying to achieve. But when your state becomes consistent, your results begin to reflect that consistency. And things that once felt difficult start to feel natural. Not because they became easier, but because you are no longer resisting them internally. And this shift is subtle at first. It does not feel dramatic, but over time it changes everything, because you are no longer chasing outcomes. You are becoming someone who naturally moves toward them, and that removes the constant tension of trying to control every detail, because control is replaced by alignment, and alignment is what allows multiple parts of your life to improve together without forcing each one separately. And that is the part that most people miss, because they are too focused on managing their desires instead of understanding their state. And until that changes, they keep repeating the same cycle of effort without full results. But once they see this clearly, once they understand that their mind is designed to match a state rather than chase isolated goals, everything begins to make sense in a way that feels simple and powerful at the same time. And from that point forward, the process of manifesting no longer feels like a struggle. It starts to feel like a natural extension of who they are becoming. And that is where everything begins to shift together instead of separately. Clarity starts to form when you stop asking what you want and begin asking who already has everything you keep thinking about. Because that question shifts your attention from chasing results to understanding identity. And this is where the real method begins to take shape in a simple way that does not feel forced or complicated. Because instead of listing goals and trying to organize them, you focus on one thing that controls all of them. The version of you that already lives that life. Not a perfect version, not an unrealistic image, but a grounded version that naturally holds the results you are aiming for. And the moment you start thinking in that direction, something changes inside your mind. Because now you are not trying to collect outcomes, you are trying to understand a state. And that state has patterns, it has thoughts, it has reactions. It has a way of making decisions that is different from your current version. And that difference is where all your results come from. Because the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not built from effort alone. It is built from identity. And once you define that version clearly, not in a complicated way, but in a simple, direct way, you begin to see how everything connects. Because that version does not think about money in isolation. It does not separate health from confidence or peace from success. It carries all of it together as a natural extension of who it is. And this is why the next step becomes powerful. Because instead of holding multiple desires in your mind and trying to manage them, you collapse them into one feeling, one central state that represents everything you want. And that feeling could be freedom, it could be peace, it could be power, it could be confidence, it could be a mix of calm control and quiet certainty. But the exact word matters less than the consistency of that feeling. Because once you identify it, you are no longer switching between different emotional targets. You are aligning with one core state that influences every area of your life. And that simplifies everything because now your focus is not divided, it is unified, and that unity removes the internal tension that used to slow you down. Because you are no longer trying to feel different things for different goals. You are building one strong internal position that supports all of them at the same time. And this is where the real shift begins to show in your daily life. Because once you have that feeling clear, you start practicing being that person now, not later, not when results show up, but in the present moment, through small choices that seem simple but carry a deeper impact. Because you start to think like that version, not by forcing new thoughts, but by gently questioning your current ones. Asking yourself if this is how that version would see the situation. And when the answer is no, you adjust, not perfectly, but consistently. And over time, that consistency begins to reshape how you think, without needing constant effort. And then you begin to react like that version, because reactions reveal your state more than anything else. They show how you handle pressure, how you deal with uncertainty, how you respond when things do not go as planned. And instead of falling back into old patterns, you pause for a moment and choose a response that aligns with the version you defined. And that small pause becomes powerful, because it interrupts the automatic behavior that used to keep you in the same cycle. And slowly those new reactions start to feel natural instead of forced. And then you move into decisions because decisions shape direction. And when your decisions begin to match that version, even in small ways, your path starts to shift because you are no longer making choices based on fear or doubt. You are making them from a place that already expects things to work out. And that expectation changes how you move, how you speak, how you act, and how you interpret everything around you. And this is where most people start to notice a difference because things begin to feel more stable, more clear, and less chaotic. Not because external results have fully changed yet, but because your internal state is no longer fluctuating the way it used to. And this leads into the final step that most people resist at first, because it goes against what they have been taught, and that is to stop chasing outcomes, not to ignore them, not to pretend they do not matter, but to stop placing them as the starting point of your effort, because outcomes follow identity, not the other way around. And when you reverse that order, you remove the constant pressure of needing immediate results to feel progress. Because now your progress is based on who you are becoming, not just what you are getting. And that shift creates a kind of patience that does not feel slow, it feels steady, because you trust that the results are aligning behind the scenes as your state becomes more consistent. And this is where many people make a critical mistake, because they understand the idea but still try to move faster than their identity has changed. They try to force outcomes while holding on to old patterns. They increase effort without changing their internal position. And that creates frustration because it feels like they are doing everything right but still not seeing the full results they expected. And the reason is simple but often ignored. Most people try to manifest faster, but they stay the same person. They repeat the same thoughts, react in the same ways, make the same decisions, and then expect a completely different life to appear. And that disconnect creates resistance that slows everything down, because your mind is always looking for consistency between who you believe you are and what you experience. And when those two do not match, it creates subtle tension that blocks full alignment. And this is why the strong line matters more than anything else. You cannot hold a new life with an old identity. Because the moment things start to change, your old patterns will try to pull you back into what feels familiar. And unless your identity has shifted enough to support those changes, they will not stay for long. And this is not about being perfect. It is about being consistent enough that your new state becomes stable. Because stability is what allows results to stay instead of come and go. And once you understand this, you stop rushing the process and start respecting it. Because you see that real change is not about speed, it is about alignment. And alignment builds over time through repeated choices that match your new identity. And as that alignment grows, something starts to shift in a way that feels deeper than surface level motivation. Because now your actions are not driven by pressure, they are driven by clarity. And that clarity creates a quiet confidence that does not need constant validation, because it is based on who you are becoming rather than what you have already achieved. And this is where the emotional side begins to build naturally. Because as your state becomes more stable, you start to feel a sense of calm that was not there before, a sense that things are moving in the right direction, even if you cannot see all the results yet. And that feeling changes how you experience your daily life, because you are no longer reacting to every small change. You are holding a steady position that keeps you grounded. And from that place, even challenges start to feel different. Because instead of seeing them as obstacles, you see them as part of the process that is shaping your identity further. And that perspective removes a lot of the stress that used to come with uncertainty. Because now uncertainty does not feel like a threat, it feels like movement. And as this continues, there comes a moment where everything starts to feel aligned in a way that is hard to explain but easy to recognize. Because your thoughts are no longer fighting each other. Your reactions are more controlled. Your decisions are more clear, and your direction feels consistent. And this is where the emotional realization becomes real, because you begin to notice that the shift you were looking for externally is actually happening internally first. And that internal change is what is creating the external movement step by step. And it becomes clear that nothing needed to change overnight for things to feel different, because the most important change already happened within you. And that change continues to expand as long as you stay aligned with it. Because identity is not something you switch once and forget. It is something you reinforce through your thoughts, reactions, and decisions every day. And as long as those remain consistent, your state remains stable. And as your state remains stable, your results continue to align with it. And that is where everything begins to move together in a way that feels natural, connected, and steady without needing constant control or pressure. Maybe the answer was never hidden in doing more, chasing more, or trying harder every single day. Maybe it was always in shifting something deeper that quietly controls everything else. Because when you really look at it, the results you want are not separate from you. They are connected to the version of you that lives, thinks, and moves in a certain way. And once that version becomes clear, everything else starts to follow without the same level of struggle. So maybe it's not about manifesting more. Maybe it's about becoming someone new, someone who no longer questions every step, someone who does not need constant proof to keep going, someone who naturally aligns with the life they once thought was far away. And if something in this video shifted the way you see things even slightly, then don't let that clarity fade away. Stay connected, because this is just the beginning of understanding how powerful your direction can be when it comes from the right place. And if you want more simple ideas that actually help you move forward without confusion, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs this reminder right now, because sometimes one shift in perspective can change everything. And the life you keep thinking about does not start somewhere in the future. It starts the moment you decide who you are going to be from here on.